Hey guys, thanks for watching the podcast. As always, if you can, in the description and in the pinned comment is the locals and the Patreon. You can join for as little as $1 a month. I do daily videos there. Or you can do the PayPal, the Cash App, or the Ko-fi, buy me a coffee for as little as I think $1 or $3. The goal is to get completely away from YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify as payment systems so that it can be independent and keep going regardless of the winds of censorship. And as I always say, the reason because of this is, or the reason for this is because none of the revenue streams are guaranteed. Case in point, the Spotify revenue, no rhyme or reason. I got more downloads this month than last month. No rhyme or reason, dropped by 60%. So that's what I mean when I say Rumble and YouTube are paying me now. It is never guaranteed for more than 30 days. So if you can, I really do mean it when I say I notice every dollar. Some people have said, well, I can't give 100, so I'm not going to give any. No, no, no. I notice every dollar and it helps. So if you can, please do. Thank you. Or you can use the links in the description. Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, promo code TPC. Or Sport Drink, promo code Tommy's Podcast if you want to get something in return. So thank you so much. And reporting on Saturday, February 28th, 2026 at 6:02 p.m. Eastern Time with Colonel Watkins, Colonel Column, not Column, Colonel Luongo, and Colonel Burlingame. I just started calling you and Dave colonels after the episodes with Colonel Dude, not a
I love Dave. I love Dave, but you know how to hurt a guy.
Man, the front of butthurt comments that were like they're not colonels. It's like obviously. But yeah, so we're here and we're gonna have a very unbiased conversation, and I know emotions are running high, and yeah. So Colonel, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
People have emotions.
I don't know, Colonel Watkins. You're the
emotion
here.
I thought that was an urban myth.
Emotions.
I don't have any emotions. Except for when I see Tommy.
Hey, this is
well,
there's not even a good excuse for why I have this. Like when Colonel Watkins first popped on, she started laughing. I was like, no, this isn't for this episode. Then I realized I'm like, well, I did it for an October 7th episode. I guess it doesn't really make it any better. But
so you guys, two of you are old enough to remember the angry sushi guy, John Belushi, on Saturday Night Live. This is what Tommy reminds me of right now. Yeah. The angry podcaster.
I love it. I love it. No, all of Belushi's riffs on Saturday Night Live are emblazoned in the back of my brain. Like, are you kidding? They were all so good.
Yeah.
They were so good.
Yeah. It wasn't sushi though. It was a sandwich shop, wasn't it? He made like
it was
sandwiches.
It was Samurai whatever, right? Samurai Hotel, Samurai this, Samurai that, and the best was when he had like Richard Pryor on and like chopped the hotel registry in half or whatever. I'm like, yo, mama son, and it was hilarious. Like it was just, and it was all ad libbed. He wasn't like, it's not like they had a script,
Just as a question, as a random observer that doesn't know anything about this, why is it that they're attacking Bahrain and Dubai? What is that about? Yeah,
I wonder if that's even happening.
Well, then my first thought was like, is this shit even fucking real?
Is it real? And then the other question is, if it is real, is it Iran? Well, let me say it this way: a deal was made with the Iranian government and representatives of the Iranian people. They're the ones who help pick the target decks and what and where. You help us with this problem, we'll help you with this other problem. Right? Forget Bahrain, that was an empty building. But who was in the UAE building? Might that be, Iran, you've got some people you're going to have to take out yourself because we can't, because, that's got geopolitical issues involved. And we'll hit your targets for you.
Yeah, they hit the Burj which is
probably going to be some people who drop dead around and bombs are dropped on them, et cetera. And that's Iran cleaning its own house. In other countries that we don't want to do that because there's geopolitical stuff involved. Sorry, Colonel, go ahead.
So kind of like a decapitation of things that still had strings attached.
Correct. Yeah. So if you're going to kill, in Greek mythology, if you're going to kill the Hydra, you got to take all the heads and you got to take them all at once.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. And in so many ways, I think that's where we are. And I think it's funny. Like I've been watching it all day. I've been watching the crash out all day of various sects and flavors of people. I can tell you today, by the time this weekend is over, there'll be a lot of dead pundits walking. because they just don't have any clues to what's going on. I think everything that we talked about, you and I, we haven't spoken all month, so other than privately in text. But what Colonel Watkins and I talked about on, I think, Monday, is operative today. That Trump was going to do what he needed to do. Whether it was going to be this week or next week or whenever it was going to be. It's really kind of funny. We use the phrase "the stars all aligned." Well, the planets are all in a row right now, right?
Yeah, today.
A big, like a big arrow, like
all
bomb
7 of them.
here, bomb here now, like you know what I mean? Like so, it's like, but what I found interesting was that he didn't even wait until cover of darkness. He went in, and they went in during the day. And so I got a text last night from Dexter White at like 1:30 in the morning, which I promptly ignored because I was like just killing pixels until 2:45 in the morning. And then I thought about it and I'm like, I am not responding to this because I have to get some sleep tonight and I have too much work to do tomorrow. And then I thought about it from like, yeah, during the day, that was a big flex.
Right.
That was a massive flex.
It's also a signal and that it's an inside job, just like Venezuela.
Well, I mean, Venezuela was brilliantly done. So that was the first thing I thought. So I went to bed not really worrying about this very much. I figured, well, we're going to find out whatever we find out in the morning. We're going to find out in the morning because there's nothing I can do about it sitting here and So, and we'll do the thing, and then we'll wake up in the morning and we'll find out where we are. I watched Trump's statement. I thought it was exactly the statement I would have expected him to make, given everything that we've all talked about in recent days. I think this group in general has had the best take on all of this, and everybody else is just like either exposing themselves for where their loyalties actually are, or are just exposing their ignorance in real time. And it's kind of sad actually, because, and I don't mean to like that, we're not like sitting here like, busting our hands, patting ourselves in the back or nothing, but like, we can read the room and we're not being stupid about it. And we're not being, if we were reading a different room, we would tell you we're reading a different room, right? Like, and I just find everything that's happening right now it's such a, there's so many angles to take on this. But the big one for me is that Iranian propaganda was really freaking good. A lot of people really do believe that like the Iranians can shut the Strait of Hormuz. Like, oh, they're just going to like drop, mines out of airplanes. I'm like, how? With what planes? With what cargo capacity? And what ability to outrun an F-22 or an F-18, or whatever we have in theater, right? I mean, like, it's insane. But they're dumb and they believe this stuff. And we have a long way to go to watch everybody kind of get deprogrammed from all of the bullshit. So that's where my take is at this point. Colonel?
So one of my favorite things to do is when something like this goes on is to go look at the intel controlled media. So right. You go and look at the New York Times and, they're calling Trump stupid. He doesn't know what he's doing. My favorite take of all of them was The Atlantic. And we know it basically with all of their former CIA directors on the board and its attachment to the MI6. Here's their take. Trump has no strategy to help the Iranian people build a legitimate state. In fact, he's dismantling tools that could have helped promote civic engagement and build a united opposition in Iran. An opposition to what? We just decapitated them. So that's kind of my favorite take of all of them that I looked at, because their concern about the Iranian people to build a legitimate state, as opposed to the way they do the regime changes, is they go in and build another tentacle off of the mothership. And they know that Trump just cut that opportunity off, and we're not going to go in there and build a state. Nor are we going to dismantle their police and their army and all of that other stuff, which allows them to reconstitute it controlled by the octopus. So, yeah. So that was kind of my favorite tell of all of them. It kind of concisely put in, oh, shit, we're not going to get to control Iran anymore.
So imagine how capable you have to be as Iran's government to have survived as a state with all the sanctions and everything that's been thrown against you for the last almost 50 years. Imagine how capable you have to be as government people to survive your own people, all the things that have been thrown at these people. If I was going to try and help a people liberate themselves, I would want to keep that kind of competence in place.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
That's been our regime change problem in the past, is in many cases, those lower echelons are not controlled by the same apparatus. Yes. And they're competent workers. And by destroying that, they're able to put their own people in and rebuild another corrupt entity.
Yes. Well, and they put incompetence in place specifically so they can control it.
Exactly.
Well, and Trump spoke to that recently. I was watching the Barbara Boyd at Promethean Actions video this morning, and she hit all these points. He's like, Trump said, he implored the police and the military and everybody else, stay at your post, stay inside. We're gonna take care of business, and then you get to come out and if you want to build a better world, we're going to help you do that, right? I mean, to the whatever ability that we can affect that and make that happen.
That was
right?
the deal that was made.
Of course.
Right? The deal that was made already, as you've articulated before, because I can't really take a good vacation, as you said, right? I don't know how to do that. I don't do that well.
Me either, dude. I'm living in the same glass house, even if I do have sheet metal behind me.
Yeah. So the deal was already made. The deal was offered to extract Khomeini. The deal was made to allow IRGC leaders and the army general to leave. They chose not to. Or they didn't have a choice. Maybe the knives were at their back. Maybe the Praetorian Guard did not give them the choice. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. Either way, you didn't leave. You didn't you didn't take the offer. But look at how surgical everything's been done.
I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. How many civilians can we point to being killed on either side? We're not listening to the Iranians, right? I think one, and we're not listening to the Iranians like flood the airwaves with fake,
Well, that's the British. That's not the Iranians doing. That would be the British flooding it. What I will say is this. Who gave us, in the negotiations, it was the Iranian government who gave us the target decks.
Exactly.
Wasn't the Israelis, wasn't the American, it was the Iranians themselves, just like Venezuela, who gave us the targeting decks. It was the Iranians themselves that made sure air defense systems and everything else were turned off, that radars, all of that. Right? What's the reason I articulate this is because we need to, and sorry about this, Tom, but we need to stop believing in magic weapons. We don't have them. They don't work.
Right.
What we need to understand is that there is a fundamental zeitgeist shift amongst the people of the world who don't want to play this fucking British game anymore, and who are willing now, because they have a powerful nation state. And again, it's the pieces I've been writing. We don't want to participate in your Anglo-American Civil War anymore. And we're willing to help the American part of the Anglos to do whatever needs to be done. And we'll give you the target decks, and we'll work with you, and we'll follow through on the other side. Right. But that's I
was going to say, I am to that point. Notice who was immediately on board with what happened. The Saudis.
Yes.
The Saudis were told, the Saudis, well, everybody really, but only the French and the British first said anything against this at all, and then the Saudis were okay with all of this, and then moreover, there was a simultaneous attack on another group of Praetorian Guards or Devil Legions or whatever you want to call them in Afghanistan, launched by Pakistan, and the Saudis were and the Saudis, who we know, were long-standing allies of. I can't remember if it's the military or the intelligence service. I think it's the ISI. They're so there's like two different, again, like just like in Iran, there are multiple factions who answer to multiple masters. One of them in Iran, I think in Pakistan, I think it's the military, are very much aligned with the Saudis, and then there's the ISI.
which is MI6 Brown, as we talked about earlier today, Tommy.
Right.
But the ISI is MI6. That's the City of London. Right.
So you send the Pakistani military in to start dealing with the situation in Afghanistan.
Right. Well, at first they sent the Afghanis, the Taliban. Right? Because, we have to use certain assets to hit certain assets that we don't want to hit directly, right? There's certain amounts of local problems that locals have to prove that they can handle themselves, or we shouldn't back them. That's been the mistake of the last, 80 years.
Yes.
There's certain levels of problems. If you can't handle those, we can't get behind you. And you're on your own. We'll keep it from spilling out, but we just can't work with you.
Colonel?
One of the things that was quite interesting to me, I had gathered some research about a year and a half ago when I was doing the exposure of the regime change in 1979. And what was amazing to me, because is the tentacles from EU, not just Britain. And I found it interesting when I discovered that Khomeini had been in France, just, hanging out. And that was kind of a pattern for me. Kind of like Trotsky hanging out in New York before the Bolshevik Revolution, Lenin hanging out in the UK, and they just happen to be hanging out there. And then all of a sudden they're inserted into some operation. And so I began questioning the whole story that we were given in 1979 and how that whole thing, because immediately after that, what happened? We start selling missiles to Iran under the Iran-Contra. And I'm like, wait a minute. I thought that was supposed to be some revolutionary regime that everybody hated. So why are we giving them missiles? And so that led me, and of course we used Israel as a cutout to get those missiles into Iran. And I'm like, wait, what? Israel is actually supplying weapons to Iran? I thought they were supposed to hate each other. And so you start unfolding all of these operations. The one thing that always hides behind all of this that most people don't talk about is Sweden. Sweden basically owned all of Iran's telecommunication. And if you go back to World War II and you look up a company called ITT, ITT was like one of those wartime apparatuses that went in. They were in Chile, they were in Brazil. They're in all of these countries that end up getting overthrown because they control the telecommunication networks and they use them to spy on these countries. And you find Sweden in Iran during that time. And so how did they not, because ITT had a back door and they gave everything post World War II to the CIA. They were basically I wouldn't call them a proprietary because they were actually a company beforehand, but they were in bed with them for sure. And
so there is one family nobody talks about to this. Terribly sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. There's one family related to this that nobody talks about. Everybody talks about Rothschilds. They really need to be talking about the Wallenbergs.
Yes.
They really need to be talking about the Wallenberg family. Yes. The Rothschilds are just their bankers.
Yes, exactly. And that was going to be, that was basically my point. There's that layer above the Praetorian Guard.
Correct. Above the high table. The Wallenbergs are above the high table. And they're one of the few families we can actually name. There's a few in Germany.
Is to be without being seen.
Yeah.
And they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I just found all of that fascinating as it related to Iran. And so I just went back and pulled some of my notes together in a post earlier today and talked about Germany's involvement in Iran post 1979. France was hugely involved.
Yes.
All the way through 1980s, 90s, and 2000s. Italy, very much involved. Yes. The UK, of course, we know. The Netherlands. And those are just the highlights. There's more, but those were they had significant business with Iran from 1979 to current. And that's dumbfounding.
Well, let's go all the way back to 1901.
Oh, yeah.
What was just undone, decapitated today is 102 whatever Promethean action.
118, I think. So
118 some odd years. I get it. It's somewhere around there. But all of this goes back to 1901. The regime that's been in power uninterrupted. We just change out, the branding and the PR and the marketing, because that's what we do. Right. But we've had the same British French controlled regime, and they've been British French controlled the whole time, has been there since Sykes-Picot. Yes. In fact, even before. Mm-hmm. And British Petroleum wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Iran, where it was born.
No, that was the thing that Barbara traced back today, is that started as British Petroleum started as the Iran Anglo oil company, and it was also interesting. Anglo-American. Thank you very much. Was also interesting. I was noted for a long time. I knew some of the stuff about France. I remember right after the JCPOA was signed back in 2015. What was the first thing that happened? I've mentioned this in 100 podcasts. I'm like, who was the first country that went in there to sign big oil concession deals to develop the North Pars gas field? No one other than Total. They needed because they needed the energy. It was a big $4.5 billion project or whatever that got sold to Gazprom after Trump put the sanctions on in 2018. Total had to sell that concession because it was worthless to them. Now they couldn't work with it. So, Trump has been trying to stop this money flow for, 8 years now, going back to when he tore up the JCPOA. And, back then I only had an inkling of some of the story. And I was like trying to work, like a lot of people in the dark. This is one of the things that I want to make sure that when we talk about this stuff, that, if you're in the audience and you're like confused by this stuff, like, remember that so were we all at one point in time as we went through the process of learning this stuff, because it's so freaking complicated and murky and everything else. And you learn by doing, you learn by repetition, you learn by speaking with other people, and you learn by doing some reading and, and some basic research on this stuff. And over the course of time, a pattern begins to emerge. And this is why we've landed where we've all landed, right? And so this is why we can say, well, all right, Trump, you're in it now. Good move. I hope you can close. I hope you can close escrow here.
This was the piece I wrote this morning, right before the whole Promethean thing hours later. But I wrote a piece this morning about how Iran is actually a key component in the English Civil War that's been going on for 400 years, and has been when we look at how the British system works, which is originally continental European, Venetian, et cetera, but how this system works is it embeds itself in a part of the world where they can have paramilitary forces and destabilizing forces that are self-funded through local minerals and metals that they can sell off to fund themselves in their own operations.
And that was the funny part about it, because I think you and I talked about this. You pointed me towards a really fascinating video about the virtualization of the flow of silver and all of that stuff. About a month ago, you and I saw that, I read it, I listened to it, and I talked about it, and I actually wrote about it for this month's newsletter as well, because it became very obvious. And what we have today is a virtualization on top of the virtualization. Correct. So first we moved away from silver so that the silver didn't flow, but the paper claims to the silver flowed. Then that stayed together all through Bretton Woods, to the end of Bretton Woods when Nixon closed the gold window. His reward for this was getting thrown out of office, of course,
or assassinated.
Or one or the other. And then we had the dollar system, and the dollar system became virtualization on top of virtualization. So now we had a debt instrument, the dollar, that was then being used as a levered up flow asset that, now we had just virtualized dollars moving around that weren't even actually dollars, right? And this is where we are today. And this is why the wealth disparity has gotten as bad as it has. It's why everybody's pissed off with the entire system. And at the end of the day, the commodity producers are all going, they're all like every commodity producer feels like the cattle farmers in the United States. Like, why are the beef processors making all the fucking money and we're the ones doing all the work, right? And but if you look at if everything you've heard about, like the way the cattle industry has worked in the last couple of weeks, because that's been a talking point, understand that it's every commodity the world over for the last 200 years.
Correct.
And
the assets are more valuable in the ground than they are moving, because that's the safest bank.
Right.
It's the securest, physically secure bank.
Right. And at the end of the day, what they want is the control over the system of creating value in the system itself through the predictability of that system, the clearing, the insurance,
the pricing,
the settlement, the banking, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's the system that's what we're fighting. Yes. And the illicit money flow is, you and I, the EM have talked about 100 times. That's an important part of that, because that's the cash layer.
Well, it's also how they pay their paramilitaries to do all the assassinations and the violence and everything else that keeps.
Agreed.
Because this system doesn't work or function without the Praetorian Guards, which have now evolved beyond just the guys in the palace. The CIA. Now it's the Devil's Legions, because now it's cartels and jihadis and everybody else. Right.
They can buy a mall in Dubuque that throws off 7% cash flow every year, and they can buy 40-foot containers, shipping containers full of Toyota Hiluxes, MREs, and AK-47s. Correct. So it doesn't matter. They can use that money however they want, and that's why it's been fascinating this last 10 days since the SCOTUS decision, or 9 days since the SCOTUS decision, only been 9 days, that you have the attack on the cartels in the biggest silver producing industry area in the entire fucking world, right? So at least the central Mexico produces most of the silver coming out of Mexico, and Mexico produces a quarter of the world's silver. Okay, so it's literally the most important region in the world that CJ and NG controlled, that El Mencho was in charge of. And now we're going after Iran.
Paramilitaries,
right? All the same stuff. And now we're talking about, and now they're expecting Cuba to fall and become a U.S. protectorate in 30 days, 30 to 60 days. That's how quickly everything is. That's how fragile that whole system was. You really stop to think about it.
Yeah.
So
think about. I mean, just from what I do with, and I took off the suicide vest. That was so fucking odd. But if you look back at like peak censorship 2020, like YouTube, you gotta yes, they can do it and they can do it well, but you gotta remember, as EM said, it's a sandcastle and the tide's coming in. Like if you constantly do this, it can stay up. But this is not an organic system. This is not it is all horse shit. So the second you stop, and that's the hard part, is getting it to stop. But the second you don't have to do anything to YouTube. If you just take off the algorithms, all of a sudden Jimmy Fallon and none of that shit goes to the front page anymore. Nobody wants to watch it. It's all this whatever organic stuff. And it's
Tommy, to your point, right back to the bar fight conversation we've been having for a year or so. At a certain point, there's all this drama and all this stuff going on, and it's maintaining this whole illusion of somebody's power, and then the bouncer just walks up and chokes you out.
Right.
And it all collapses.
And then that's the real, it's all other gossip and forming guerrilla groups. It all really ends.
And all the cliques and all that. So
the dude I worked with was Mr. Bulgaria. Literally was Mr. Bulgaria, 6'4". His name's Ivan. It would always end when Ivan's knuckles would connect with someone's brainstem. And that's when it all stopped.
So that's the point, right? The point is that all of it, all this complex, unbelievable 400 years of complexity we built up is all dependent on violence.
Yeah.
And our willingness to put up with assassinations. When we stop being willing to put up with assassinations and murder and violent extortion, etc., and we literally say we are going to fucking kill you, and we do it, it all starts to come undone rather quickly. Now you got to be careful.
Be it fast boats,
a lot of these murder assets around the world. Like the Devil's Legions are vast. They are deeply embedded. They are way more complex and sophisticated than people know. They are unbelievably well funded. We could take all of the assets and wealth away from them that they could, continue trafficking all of that. They have $100 trillion war chest. So unless we fundamentally crash the banks and the financial system to wipe that out, they have $100 trillion war chest.
Well,
that's 20 years.
Silver did a very credible job of taking a few $100 billion away from them.
That does hurt, but $100 billion or $300 billion out of $100 trillion is. I know. Need to think these numbers, right?
Colonel,
yeah.
But go ahead.
But the mechanisms they use, like Jane Street, Citadel, they're all coming apart.
Yep. Blue Owl.
Yes.
There was a London company this morning. MF. I can't remember the name. It doesn't for him. MFS, which is a mortgage holder, or a mortgage intermediary, or whatever. I have a feeling that the silver market blew somebody up over the weekend and over the last couple of weeks. We're not going to find out who they are, and it'll never be reported that way. But it's a lot of people, and a lot of these organizations, a lot of these companies, they exist as nothing more than money laundering operations, and to position themselves. Jane Street's a perfect example, and it's all, and whoever is pushing that meme out there, is pushing that idea out there. Kudos to them, because that's a clear counter signal to whatever's been thrown out in the other direction.
I wrote an article a long time ago, like 2 years ago, when the whole FTX thing exploded. Just because I had been looking at Gladio and BCCI and Nugent and patterns about how they money launder. And I started looking into the crop of people that was transiting through Jane Street. It's like a JV squad holding for all of these brilliant mathematicians that were coming out of MIT, that were coming out of Harvard, like the Bill Browders of the world. All of these steeped in math people, and they would sit them in Jane Street and teach them how to trade. And the CIA has the ability, because they make things happen, to say, hey, we're going to go do something over here. They know exactly what to short and when to short it. And then they deploy them out into the network that they have. The Jane Street was basically like an incubator for people. And they're spread out everywhere. And it was so obvious to me, researching Sam Bankman-Fried, and all of his collaborators, that entire thing was set up basically for that reason. And you start to your point about the mortgages. Like during the savings and loan, which basically was a CIA money laundering in the 80s, to fund their Contra and all other paramilitary operations, the fact that so many of those loans were not collateralized. So how are we loaning? And they were loaning hundreds of millions of dollars. They were using union pensions to deposit under a new scheme that Reagan and Bush set up called broker deposits. And whoever put the broker deposits in the bank of these savings and loan, they, and not the board of the savings loan, got to decide who got the loans. So those people were the money launderers. And I put pension fund money in a savings and loan, say 100 million. Then I got to decide who got the 100 million. And those $100 million of loans were being given to like this round robin of people that kind of just traded, like, I'm on the board of this savings and loan, but I'm going to loan that guy over there on that savings and loan money for his project that never got built. And oh, by the way, I didn't collateralize the loan properly. So that money's gone. And they got to loan out more money because of fractional lending than was put on deposit. So you just had this, it cost American taxpayers at the end of this dance, $200 billion they stole from us.
And there's always a London leg there, because you can infinitely rehypothecate the same collateral as many times as you want when it passes through London. FYI, just to remind, in the United States, infinite rehypothecation for the most part. I think the savings loan, and I may be wrong about this, but that may have been a loophole that allowed that process to really make its way. This is how they went.
That all came from the 1994 Banking Deregulation Act. That's what allowed all of this to take off. So if I might, I want to be very careful, because we all talk about money laundering. Money laundering is a fraction of the theft. A fraction. Securities fraud is 100 times the size, to the Jane Street stuff, et cetera. Securities fraud, creating multi-billion-dollar company, unicorns. Like this whole Silicon Valley has been based off of this, unfortunately, since 2001, is creation of these unicorns. How does a startup company with no revenues and 300 employees have a billion-dollar valuation? It's all made up BS. And then how does it go public or it gets bought out by private equity firms, right? 3 or 4 private equity firms, and now it's a $300 billion company, right? So it's secure. And then the things that go public, either through IPOs or what are called reverse IPOs, and you float it on the public markets, the whole thing collapses. So, and stock manipulation, securities price value manipulation, both on the rise and the fall, that's 100 times the size of money laundering. The other piece I want to talk about is, what set this all in motion, at least in the English speaking peoples. I honestly couldn't give a damn about anybody else, quite frankly, at this point. Right. And I probably never really did anyways. I thought I did. And then I went to those parts of the world and I realized you're all assholes too. They even learned their languages and dated their women and all of that, right? It's like, yeah, okay. All of this.
Sorry, Dan, that was all.
EM's crushing all the guests.
We call them long-haired shooters, right?
He almost killed Murray earlier at the fucking.
He's had a month off. I've
had a month off. Yeah,
I thought Steve was gonna die. I mean, Steve's a white guy like me, but I mean, his face turned like ruby red. He texted me right before the show and he said, "I'm still laughing about that shit." Literally. So if I might, right? The real power of the system is something we need to look at. It's really about title, okay? And it's about, Tom talked sometime about velocity of money. That's not the real power. The real power is the velocity of title transfer. So all of these fake assets, all these artificial assets, all these values get created, but they get bought and sold by family offices, by private equity funds, the hedge fund, back over here to some, institutional investor, etc. So these assets, the way in which the system works that keeps these asset values going up, which is all totally artificial and made up and locks in the money laundering and the securities fraud, is this constant massive flow of title transfer between new investors, new buyers, new, whatever, whether that's fractional or that's whole. And that's every asset class, from art to real estate, to businesses, to accounts receivable, all of it. So the way in which this whole system works, and the way in which probably 90%, well, I wouldn't quite say that, somewhere between 70, 80% of asset values are based off the fact that title changes hands, probably, depending on what the asset class is, at least 12 times a year. Some of these change hands way more, way more, because they get rolled up into higher instruments and et cetera. So the way in which the system really works, what is the Bank of England? It's not a bank. It never was a bank. It's a title company. And it's a title company that is consistently solid, over time worked out. And this is why, blockchain and cryptocurrency scares the living shit out of me, right? Because it removes friction and it accelerates all of this. Now you can put more assets with more bullshit values and more bullshit titles onto a chain, make them more complex and move them at an even more rapid pace. It's just like, Tom, back to chemistry, right? It is this internal energy of this constant churn of assets, asset classes, assets between different owners, et cetera, that sustains the illusion of this whole thing and primarily maintains the complexity of it. So it's so hard for people to work things out. The other piece I want to give is that because of this speed at which assets are changing hands and values are associated a little bit up and down, you're also getting a vast amount of, and Colonel, this gets back to what you were saying about savings and loan. The insiders are the ones that get access to that speed of asset changing.
Yes.
Yep.
And they get virtually zero interest or even less than negative interest rate lending to buy and sell those assets.
Yes.
Of course.
And it's all artificial. And again, this is 100 times the size of the money laundering. And it's all legit.
And the thing, one thing real quick, is the way you have two options in this. This is classic. You either allow everything to deflate or you raise the price of the collateral on the actual collateral underneath the system to bring the price of that collateral in line with the current valuations and effectively zero the board out in the short term. So, or in that moment, and that's why we're seeing the Trump administration push the price of gold and silver as hard and as fast as they are, and because they know, one, they can break the system that has controlled the price. And the oil's next, by the way, especially with Iran off the board. Now you can push the price of the collateral up relative to the value of the assets and balance the books between the haves and quote unquote the haves and the have-nots.
How are you going to balance between the have-nots? How are you going to do that with asset value? So if 80%, 78% of asset values are artificial,
these asset values that are artificial, those of us who have some of those assets that are valued based on this, we either, if you want to do this with the least amount of social unrest, if you want to do this with the least amount of blood in the streets of the people that you're trying to protect, you have one of two options. Well, actually, you have one option. You have to hold asset values, and you have to literally take these I would call them credit-based assets. You got to take these credit-based assets and hold their valuations basically flat while the collateral rises in price and while the cash flow of the people who have been the victims of this for ever and a day get a chance to rebuild their balance sheets and get a chance to rebuild their lives. That's the only way you do this and minimize.
How are they going to do that when starting asset prices are as high as they are? Right? Because you would have you'd have to bring wages up rapidly to that level, which
they are. And they are. No, wages in the United States are rising at like 7 or 8% a year. This is a lot right now. The wages are rising, and they're rising quick. And real productivity is rising, not GDP, which is a bullshit definition of.
I don't see productivity rising either. I see AI-based, technology-based. I keep hearing all those arguments, but that's not.
Yeah, real. I hear those arguments. I don't think that's. I think we're getting to find out real quick that AI is not actually going to do a lot of what people think it's.
Anthropic's just the first one to fall. Yeah.
No, I agree. Okay, let's bring the Colonel back.
Let the Colonel get in. Colonel, you're far too. You have way too many manners. You gotta just throw elbows. Don't wait for him. You gotta punch him in the nut.
Go ahead. I wanted to go back to what EM said because this is another fascinating thing to me that I learned a couple of years ago. To your point about how often and using art, because this was something I did not know. Obviously, art is a favorite place to launder money. But the velocity that you're talking about, I did not know. I ran across a guy, and I don't even remember his name, but he was one of the oligarchs. And he was going through a divorce. His wife sued him. And in the court paperwork, he had his residence in Monaco. And in the court paperwork, his wife alleged that he had all this massive collection of art. And she articulated that there are port storages companies, and she named several of them. And the art never leaves the port.
Correct.
They're in these museums.
These are international.
Yes, they're international property of the ports, and they're huge, like 500,000 square foot facilities, all temperature controlled, and they're filled with art and all kinds of other precious antiquities, and they sell them, the velocity of them. They never leave the facility. And she was pissed off because in the divorce decree, he didn't claim that he had any of these assets, and she knew about them all. She knew the names of the facilities. She knew the ports that they were in.
Wow.
And I found that fascinating because that's how they get their velocity. They don't even have to move it.
You just got the fucking.
Well, it never goes into an actual nation state jurisdiction. Never. So it never. So I found out about this because of a certain Vietnamese lady I knew, very wealthy, who did this with orchids. Entire facility for these orchids that are like $5 million per plant.
Have you guys
orchids?
you're describing this, have you guys seen Tenet, the Christopher Nolan time travel?
I haven't. No.
Okay, you need to watch it because he literally has those. That's one of the. That's literally what he's talking about. He's those that's. I mean, there's a pivotal moment there's a whole pivotal argument. It's a piece of the story in Tenet is based on out of one of these facilities. This is where they were moving back. Time is moving forward and backwards and all the shit. It's Nolan, so it's a mind fuck. But he's trying to tell you exactly this: that the shadow, that
economy, the shadow
economy exists outside of everybody's jurisdiction.
Correct.
In effect, outside of time itself.
Correct.
I found
this is fascinating. I
found that whole thing fascinating. But the other point to your comment about the titles, that was how Pete Bruton, the guy that wrote the book, the Mafia, the CIA, and George Bush, exposing the savings and loan debacle, he had to sit down, and that was one of his key findings is the title. The way that they kept changing hands, it would be sold from one savings and loan to the other savings and loan, and every time it would go up by $1 million.
Correct. Correct.
It was the same property, never developed, but every time they repositioned it, it had some other big scheme that was so they just kept rolling the amount, and it perfectly illustrates what you're saying, EM.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And this is the concern I have, Tom, right? Is that people need to understand that there is an entire siphoning of 100 years, 200 years of wealth out in this other system that what you're talking about, Tom, can't touch. And all they will do is they're doing it blockchain right now. Miles Harris talks to this brilliantly, right, in his series. All they're doing is they are accelerating the title transfers in a system that we can't touch, the system that, the only way you're going to do this is you have to physically go take possession of all that physically, because what they're
a lot of them are those islands off the coast of England.
Correct.
They
Jersey,
have
Guernsey.
Yep. Yeah, they have all of their special trusts set up there. Cyprus is another location where they have, Yes,
there's a reason that they don't need nation states anymore. They don't need the Westphalian model anymore. They have $5 quadrillion in wealth that they're just playing with.
That external hard drive.
Why?
They don't need the computer. They got
extra because we believe in the illusion of this type of money. We think it's real. It's the alchemist dream writ large without actually having to convert something to gold. Now, if they need to, they'll sell some of that physically and convert it to gold.
Right.
That's alchemy.
Well, so back to your original point, EM. If you know that's what the system is you're fighting, and you know where the assets are. Yeah. And you have a guy in charge of by far the biggest and most powerful military in the world that no one is willing to stand up to. Because again, chatting this morning, and I got reminded that, while the American Air Force may be the largest air force in the world, the second largest air force in the world is operated by the U.S. Navy.
And then I think like top 5 or top 6 is actually the Army Air Force.
So if I can, the Army has more boats than the Navy. That's because of the way ships and boats are designated. But
somebody said, sorry, they go Maduro and Ayatollah, they go, this is just Trump fucking telling you, give me that 1.5 trillion and shut the fuck up.
So I want to be careful of something, okay? I want to be careful, Tom, because the only way in which, here's the catch-22 that we're in, right? Some of us old enough to remember the book and the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Was that Arkin? Was that Arkin?
Alan Arkin. Oh, yeah, Alan Arkin. Yeah.
He was awesome. Yeah.
Mike Nichols. That's a great movie.
Yeah. The difficulty we are in is that the only way we can afford such military power is that we sustain these asset values. This is the problem, right? This is why you have to pull back to your shores and your borders and be totally self-sufficient for about 4 generations and let all that collapse, right? Because then you don't need $1 trillion military.
Right.
You can still have the same military, but you don't spend $1 trillion for it because that's a ludicrous price anyways. The military we have is 400, built real money in terms of productivity converted, et cetera. Yeah.
Sure. Well, the other thing I was going to go back to is something you and I've talked about many times, which is that, at the end of the day, who's going to fight for these people? Because when the push comes to shove, if we're all pulling back and we're all pulling out and everything else, at a certain point, okay, you've got these vaults in the same kits. That's nice. Who are you going to pay to keep anybody from coming in?
Well, the problem is that's a lot of Americans.
I'm not just saying Americans here. Now I'm talking about everybody. Because if
I get it. But Americans have Americans who have their assets, and not just these, but there are other structures and other things. They have a disproportionate power in the United States itself because of this, right? Yep. So it's like,
and we're watching the reflection of that power in the gridlock that we have in the Senate right now to fix anything.
Correct. Well, and in the total and absolute corruption of the court judiciary and et cetera, right? Because they know who their masters are. Their masters are the wealthy elite. They know that. Why? Because the most powerful law in the English world is trust law. By far, the trust courts are by far the most powerful courts in the English system, going back to William the Conqueror.
Explain that.
Which is why that takes you to Epstein. That's why they went to him for tax advice. He was a master, as was Paul Helliwell before him.
Maxwell.
Yes,
Maxwell did very well.
Experts on trust
law.
Yep.
I have very good friends who do very good trust law. I'm very, very familiar with it, and they do it for the elites, and they're the ones whose people didn't get caught in the Panama Papers or whatever the second group was. Right. I can't remember.
Could you give me a quick? I have no idea what it is. Can you give me a quick rundown of what is trust law?
Trust in the English system, there's common law and there's trust law. Now, the common law is this superseding law, right? It's the common law in the court systems and in contract law and in the judicial, in the criminal courts and et cetera. But separate from that is the trust law system, is the trust courts. It's a fascinating thing to study because you can, if these folks that have like these 2- and 3-tier trust structures and go into a judge when they're getting sued and they'd say, sorry, that's a trust. That's a trust within a trust. And, we can't touch it. I'll give you an example, right? People look at the Rockefellers and they're like, the Rockefellers, this, or this. Rockefellers don't control their wealth. That's the Sokolov family. Sokolov family is the executors of their trusts and have been for 100 years or so. So you have a trusted, this is what makes the Rothschilds the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds don't own that wealth. Rothschilds' wealth is, Tom, to the things you say about like BlackRock, right? They, $20 trillion or whatever they manage, but their book is like, the Rothschilds is the same. When people look at Rothschild wealth, it's not Rothschilds. They are the administrators, right? The executive administrators of all these trusts that go back to the 1600s. So it looks like the Rothschilds have all this wealth. That's not their wealth. That's these offshore centers and structures and everything else. That's trusts. They are the executors. And what does it work in the trust court system? You can't go after that family's wealth. They don't manage it. They don't control it.
Because real bankers don't have Wikipedia pages.
Yeah,
correct.
Well, I was going to say it's also
and the real trust administrators, right. Because again, there's generally at least a 2-tier trust structure, and usually there's a 3-tier trust structure.
In terms of like the assets under management, you could look at like the library of 1,984 episodes. Like I manage it. There are some episodes where it's me talking. It's mostly I'm just capturing this thing and then put it. It's not me. I can't.
It's your library.
If you were to come, but if you were to come to sue me and be like, tell General Flynn not to say this, I'd be like, you can. I mean, good luck. I have no control. Tell Tom Luongo.
That's not far from the truth.
People do this a lot. They go, tell Tom that. I'm like, you can try it. Fucking.
You try telling me to shut up.
And 2, if I did, he'd kill me.
I found out kind of happenstance how this whole trust things work about 15 years ago when we decided we were going to buy some real estate and renovate houses. Florida and Illinois, and that's not a coincidence, by the way, since a lot of the mafia people in Chicago came to Florida we are the only two states in the United States that actually, in addition to regular trust law, has what's called a land trust.
Yeah.
We're the only two that has it. And in a land trust, you don't even have to reveal who the beneficiaries of the trust are.
Yes.
So the only thing on the trust is the name of the registered agent or the executor of the trust on a separate detachable page that is not required in any real estate transaction, is the beneficiaries. And so in many cases, you can't even find out who owns anything if they're held in a land trust. So this entire system of trusts have been set up for the system that Ian was just referring to. And
it's what destroyed my family.
Yeah.
When I was a boy, this is what destroyed my family. We had the executors of my mother's trust. My grandfather hadn't finished it. He died early, mysteriously. Right. And the executors undid the trust by going to the other two beneficiaries and going to war with my mother. I was raised in this, right? I've watched this from the inside. Yeah. Terribly sorry, Colonel. Yeah.
No, but I mean, and that's what they found out in Pete Bruton's talked about it when the savings and loan, all of those guys, even the ones that went to jail, very few of them, they had taken all of the wealth that they had accumulated and put in these offshore trusts under their wife and kids' name, and they were completely untouchable. They had hundreds of millions of dollars. So if they had to spend a couple of years in jail, which was like basically what happened, they didn't care.
They didn't care. See, this is the thing I'm getting at, right? Is that people don't realize that we have 4 centuries of stolen wealth from the English-speaking people. And the only thing that sustains that wealth is these made-up magic of trusts. They're not real. They're just made up. It's contracts. It's just contracts.
Yeah, it's just paper.
Contracts of contracts of contracts. And the only thing that makes it work is we agree that it works. Right. And ultimately what it gets down to then is, well, okay, all of that, of all these asset classes, well, what is down underneath? Tom, the stuff you say, and Alex as well. Down underneath, however, there are hard assets in the ground that all of that is based on. And they have to actually physically take possession of that for any of the other stuff to work.
The actual goods, yeah.
So
back to
what do you do?
Keep it in the ground.
It's like Malone Labe. Come and take it.
Well, I was gonna say no, and then it makes even sense. You just keep it in the ground. It's like if you have bricks of silver, it's like you got to come and take it. It's like, what if you just don't even refine it and just keep it in the fucking?
Correct.
That's even harder. Good luck.
Correct. What are you gonna do? That's why they created this whole artificial system of hypothecation upon hypothecation. Why? Because it is safer to keep it in the ground.
Keep it literally in the
and to build a whole complex bullshit financial system on top.
And this is this is the main reason why I'm gonna now let's bring it back. Let's bring it out of the clouds and back to brass tacks. So Iran, one thing, obviously oil in the ground, or the oil and gas and all that stuff. And the quote unquote ownership of those assets. Well, let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is Canada. And what the Commonwealth is actually protecting by putting Mark Carney in charge of Canada, which is to protect all the gold and silver in Ontario. There's a shit ton of gold and silver in Ontario. People talk about the Canadian Rockies and this. No, dude. The accessible, the mineable, the measured and indicated, the ones that have NI 4301s associated with 43101. Sorry, 43101s associated with against them. Those are all, a lot of them are all in Ontario. Same thing with all of the silver mines in the central part of Mexico. Same thing, and now we start to go out into the Canadian Rockies out in BC and the Yukon and whatnot. Sure, we can go map all that stuff, but that's hideously expensive to go measure and indicate all of that stuff and drill and explore and do all that work. This is why they lost their freaking minds when Trump said 51st state. Because now you're literally saying we are going to take this out from underneath the auspice and the ownership of the Commonwealth.
We are going to get it.
Ultimately, we are extending our physical capacities to prevent you from taking it out of the ground. and putting it somewhere else.
And then all the
or just in general, just to replace the law.
Yeah.
Because
I get that, but again, contracts are only as good as your ability to physically enforce them. When it comes to physical assets, right? I don't care how complex they are. So where we are in this reset of a system, I do think that Norway has done it right. As much as I hate to say with the crazy shit that Norway's doing, but Norway did it right with their sovereign wealth fund.
Mm-hmm.
And when Trump was talking about sovereign wealth fund, absolutely, to the point of, Tom, what you're articulating, the only way in which this would work is if we completely abrogate any claims to any physical assets of the United States. Say those contracts were illegally obtained, the wealth or money that was used to buy it were illegally obtained. These assets belong to the trust. And so the United States of America is actually a land trust chartered in the city of London. We deny that claim. We can't, we just invalidate it, come and try and take it. Right? With your tens of millions of Indians. Good luck. Right? We kill a couple hundred or one of them. That's easy. Yeah. Right? There's a lot of them, but it's kind of like the bugs in Starship Troopers movie. Right?
It's afraid.
Yeah. It's afraid. Right?
It is. Yeah.
So
and by the way, we're gonna get a remake of that based on actually Heinlein's book, as opposed to the Dutch shitlib version that we got back in Paul Verhoeven.
It was campy though. It was campy and fun.
It was campy and fun.
But it wasn't Heinlein. But the point being is that to your point, we're free to put the assets in an actual land trust, a sovereign wealth fund for the American peoples, and use that as an example for the Persian peoples, for Iran, and use that as an example of for the Canadian people and the native peoples, and we're going to get rid of fuck tons of peoples. Then what you do is you allow the asset values to stay at that level in the sovereign wealth fund, and you use that to pay for all the social services. You get rid of taxation. You do all of that stuff. You remove all of this burden on people. And now to what you're articulating, that now it's okay that we have these grossly exaggerated valuations. Why? Because it's in the sovereign wealth fund, and everybody who's an actual native born citizen participates in the sovereign wealth fund according to whatever guidelines. That works. But to do that means we gut the entire financialist system of the last 400 years, and really going back to the 700s. We gut it. And what do we do? That's easy. It's contracts. You just invalidate those contracts and say all of that was stolen wealth that you used to say or claim you have some access to rights to our resources.
Ready?
And productivity.
Trump has articulated this by saying, I wonder how much, if you stole this friggin' tax money and used it to buy friggin' U.S. treasuries, why do you think we should owe this debt?
That's one of the first things you and I talked about. Right? Is that we're just going to invalidate the entities. That's the only way I can see. You just invalidate the entity itself and say, we don't owe you that debt. That money was stolen that you used to buy our debt. And your entity in the first place, like the UN or whatever, is invalid anyways. It's just a made up thing.
Well, think about it. Think about it this way, and then I'll say this, and I'll let the Colonel come in, which is the following, which is that we're proving. What do you think we're doing by proving the waste, the fraud, the abuse, the Somali Leering Center mafia, and all of this bullshit, the graft, all that? That's documenting like we don't owe this money to these, because that money wound up in an NGO, which ends up thing, and cut out and then went to the trust somewhere, and blah blah blah. Like, sorry, that was stolen. And last I checked, I don't have to pay interest on stolen goods.
Correct. Yeah.
Just saying.
I completely agree. Yeah.
I agree with everything you said.
Okay. I just, okay, so let's move on to the next. Okay, we've solved that problem.
Well, let's talk about what happens after Iran, right? So it's not quite done. There's some mop-up stuff that's got to happen in Iran, right? So one of the things I'm looking at is that there's an army, a NATO army that we need to make sure doesn't go into Ukraine or into Eastern Europe to exacerbate the Orthodox, the second Roman Catholic world, and which the Protestants fall under, even though they like to say they don't, they're still same family. But, this original Rome versus Constantinople fight, we need to not have a NATO army that continues that fight, because that's what that is, right? Well, what army is that? That's Turkey. That's Turkey, and that's British. That's been British for, again, just like, Iran, Persia, that's the Turks have been British projects since the 1920s. That's Ataturk, right? Okay, well, what do you do with the Turkish army? They're not going to just disband or go away, or so how does that get dealt with?
You got to suck them into a conflict they can't win.
You got to attrit them. Yeah, you got to attrit them. You got to exhaust them away. You got to. Yep.
So I noticed before this happened, how long ago was it that Trump moved the U.S. the tripwire troops out of Al-Tanf in the South? That was a couple months ago. Last week, I saw the reports of the convoys of American troops in the eastern part, east of the Euphrates, up in the northeast corner. They're leaving.
Yes.
Meaning now you've got a messy, balkanized Syria that the Turks are now the administrators.
They own it.
Yeah, it's like a big fucking albatross as far as I'm concerned.
So we flooded. I said it within an hour. Turkey going in, Assad being pulled out.
Right.
I said this is a trap for Turkey. I said it within an hour. Right. I suspect very much, and we talked this earlier, Tommy and Stephen and I, but I suspect very much that all of these assets, air assets and naval assets, we flooded in there. One was to make sure we didn't have the false flag, as we've all talked about. The other one, however, is to make sure that Turkey didn't get involved with what we're doing to, reset Persia.
Because Erdogan,
he said he was going to.
Was bitching about it. Exactly.
What do you think MBS told Erdogan when he went to see him?
We don't have your back. You are not the head of the Islamic world. You are not the power in the Islamic world. You are not the Ottomans.
Well, and that, again, you're right, because look at the way the Saudis have responded to both of the current conflicts.
Right.
They've supported the Americans in Iran. They've supported Pakistan going into Afghanistan.
Well,
when I saw the Saudis do that the other day, I was like, well, that makes perfect sense. The Saudis work with us now.
Yeah. Sorry. When we look at this again, if we look at all of this in the conflict, that this is actually an Anglo-American civil war. It's been going on between two capitals, Washington, D.C. and London, since the 1800s, the late 1700s, but really the 1800s, right? Only one of these capitals is going to prevail. Only one. At the end of this conflict, sometime in the next decade, it's either going to be, and we don't know yet, to be quite frank, we're doing all the right things. We don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that. We got all kinds of internal shit we got to deal with, right? This is a 30, 40-year fight to get through it, right? And make it stick, right? I suspect two things were done. One, we articulated to MBS and the rest of the Arab League that we will not allow, to the best of our ability, a holy war. That we're not going to allow an Islamic versus Christian, whatever, holy war. We're not going to allow it. Right. And we are not, Islam is not our, the Islamic world, you're not our enemy. Now you got to deal with, your terrorist shit, and you got to deal with your own radicalization. You got to deal with the British asset. You got to burn out the devil's legions yourself. Right. You got to do that. But
and we'll stop funding them.
And we'll stop funding them, and we'll stop, I hate to say this, but sending Green Berets to work with them to, train them up and all of that.
Yes.
And CIA guys. Right. So that's one argument there. Right. This is the Islamic world. This is your area. You want to have a golden age again, Islamic golden age with oil money. So you're not having to spend 80% of your money and time on internal defense. All good. Right. Just you take care of that so we can take care of this. Okay. Well, what's the biggest issue there? Turkey. Yep. Why? Muslim Brotherhood. Why? Because that's city of fucking London.
That's right.
Right. And then you also got the big problem there. Where? Egypt. That's another issue, right? It's another issue there because Egypt is only ostensibly Islamic.
I was going to say that's why we've moved so much armor
into the east
back
and
into Greece, into Greece
and Italy.
Yeah, totally. It's so very, very obvious in that from that perspective.
It's also why we took down Libya. Unfortunately, before we were fixing our problems, that's why we destabilized Libya, right? Specifically for Egypt and North Africa, the MENA region, which was going to be used as a holy war. That was the intent. So holy wars. Okay, so Turkey, get it? We'll see. India, Pakistan, that's another still major problem that's on the table. And we got tens of millions of them in our own countries, tens of millions. And they've been set up by the financialists as the CEOs of all of our major companies and all of our major banks, and increasingly in all of our government facilities and offices. People, that is a real fight. And when, so to me, there's, Tom, we talking about orders of operation. The ultimate end of this English Civil War is we're going to retake the British Isles. Period. And we're going to reset the Commonwealth. The step prior to that is we're going to fix this India and Pakistan issue here in our own, this infiltration in our own countries. And I think that maybe has already started, but what's that?
And which is why Mark Carney being brought into Canada and then opening up the floodgates to, every guy with the last name Singh is so very obvious.
5,000 of them a month being flooded into Ireland. And the head of the Minister of the Interior, the head of MI5 is a Pakistani, while the head of MI6 is a Banderite Ukrainian daughter.
Yes.
Yep. So this English Civil War,
and the Canadians sent Chrystia Freeland back over to Ukraine to oversee the money laundering and all the rest of it. I mean, it's so very freaking obvious at this point. It's part of the reason why, and it's why Keir Starmer is given Gibraltar back, because they want to cut off the American asset to the entrance to the Mediterranean. It's so fucking obvious.
Correct.
God, it's so fucking obvious.
Garcia as well.
And then obviously the Che Islands thing, which is, and you know what?
So,
there's all this shit's cute and all, but you just like at some point, I wish Blaine were here. I could just look at him and go, okay, so dude, when are we sending the snake eaters in the freaking London? And just arresting all of 10 Downing Street. You know what I mean?
You got to work through. 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 Right? Turkey's the next big one. India, Pakistan are the next big ones. After that is when it's like I wrote, I don't know, a couple of days ago, right? But we know we're finally in the culmination of shit's real when we start stacking off the coast of fucking England.
I was gonna say, so when you retake the islands, you mean literally?
I mean literally.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, quite literally.
Hell yeah.
This is not hyperbole or exaggeration. You need to understand they are fortifying in the British Isles. They are fortifying across the Commonwealth. Because what we are really dealing with is a civil war. It looks like a world war because the British Empire is the greatest empire the world has ever known.
Right.
It is the most extensive, the most powerful, the longest running at this level empire the world has ever seen. We are everywhere, and we've been everywhere at every level for hundreds of years. And so everything that we are seeing is actually a civil war between London and Washington, D.C.
Yep.
And it has been for 200. This civil war specifically has been going on since the 1640s. A lot of these original stock American families came here because they were loyal. They were loyal to England. They were loyal to the original crown, not the occupied crown in 1688. They were loyal Englishmen. And you could not be a loyal Englishman in England since the 1660s. Right? So we've been in the Civil War since the 1620s and 40s. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is why I'm gonna keep bringing up when I first started going down the rabbit hole about SOFR versus LIBOR and Powell and this and everything else. And somebody posted up and like my Slack server one afternoon. They go, by the way, Powell's an 8th generation American.
Yes.
And when Trump nominated Scott Bessent for Treasury Secretary, his nomination letter spent an entire paragraph talking about Scott being, the descendants of French Huguenots going back to the 1680s.
Yes.
You don't make that you don't you can
randomly
say all this
insert that.
You don't randomly insert that.
By the way,
what your opinion of Donald Trump is and how undisciplined and ass you think he is. He doesn't write that if that's not important. It was a huge signal. And then watching Bessent run the Treasury Department the way he has, and the way he's operated the gold and silver rally, the way he's operated the friggin' Treasury markets and everything else, it's clearly these guys know what they're doing.
We are in civil war, and they know it. And these old families, I was raised and taught to it from the time I was a boy. We are in a civil war that never ended, and we're coming to the culmination phase of it. Because America is now strong enough, capable enough, knowledgeable enough. The core of the old empire has degraded itself enough. It's been infiltrated enough. It's been overwhelmed by, foreigners enough that now, and the rest of the world can see enough now. And we have two other great powers that are finally strong enough now,
right, to help support us, because that's
correct to keep it from over.
That's what this really comes to. The Russians can bind them down and trip them out in Ukraine. The Chinese can hold off
60% of the world's population. The
in Asia, right, and all of that. Yes. You'll liberate Japan from the financialists slowly but surely, and now all of a sudden the game board's completely different.
Correct.
Telling my friend the other day that I look at the Treasury Secretary as more of the State Department than the State Department during this administration.
Yes. When I had Blaine on the podcast for the first time to basically begin introducing him to the group, the first question he asked me on my own podcast was, "So who do you think the real head of the Joint Chiefs is?" Is it Scott Bessent or the other guy, whoever's in it? Hey, Raising Cane. I'm like, well, Scott Bessent. Duh, Big Gay Patton. That's what I call him. Like, I think it's just hilarious.
I think he's more of a State Department guy than the military guy, but.
Fair.
I actually fundamentally agree. What he is doing is the statecraft that we haven't done. Because he has the stick. And the stick for this system, for the enemy, the stick is not, it's finance. These are financialists. The only real stick is I know the plumbing of how all this works.
And remember that it was Scott Bessent that was the guy who actually ran the trade at the Quantum Fund that broke the quote unquote broke the Bank of England. So if you're going to take on this fight, you're going to go grab the guy who knows more about how to break the freaking central bank by having done it.
Yes.
Than anybody else. And then all you got to do is find out whether this guy's loyal or not. And apparently, if I'm not mistaken, the story really goes that it was going to be Lutnick at Treasury until somebody introduced Trump to Bessent, and within 3 weeks, it was Bessent.
You got to have an autist. You have to have
something happened.
Autist. Quite literally, we are in a time where complexity has reached such a degree that the only people capable of fighting at this level are autists.
Literally.
And so
Rain Man.
when it's Rain Man, but it's a functional, it's Asperger's autism. It's not full on.
Yeah, Eli.
Right. It's high functioning. I wouldn't know anything about that.
Wait a minute. Rain Man could go to the casino and win every time.
I'm with you, Colonel.
I wouldn't know anything about being high functional Asperger's here.
Not you, Tom.
Seriously. I mask it really well. I
finally got to one movie I've actually watched.
I've seen them all.
And I don't know if I'm jumping too far ahead of you. How do you make it stick? Ben, if we're talking about something that's this hyper complex, this isn't as simple as you're your fellow gang leader, you go shoot him. If you're talking about something this complex and it's been going on for this many centuries and it's just woven in, how do you make it stick? And is there just or do you have to have a reasonable expectation of you set it up for success and just that it will eventually be challenged again?
You give medals of honor, 2 of them, to 2 different generations at a State of the Union address, and you let the world know. You let your tier 1 and your military guys, your special operations, your military guys know. We see you, we recognize you, we honor you, we make the world see and recognize and honor you. And it's also a threat. Look, people, we still have a lot of these guys. You don't know who they are because the media never allows you to see these kinds of guys. But we still got a guy who looks like Superman.
Literally,
I know. Literally, I hear that guy stood up and went, he's going to be played by Henry Cavill in the movie.
Everyone saw that. Everyone was just like, "What the fuck is that?" Like,
there's a lot of those guys.
Yeah, no,
there's a lot of them, right? Yeah. And I know, E4 guys that had 2 combat rotations, the 3 infantry combat rotations, and some of the worst fighting. Now, granted, he was an E4 because he made E5 and then got busted back down to E3, and which is pretty common, right? But point is, we've got a lot of. So, Tommy, getting to the answer of what you're saying, right? Every once in a while, we have to use surgically precise violence to let people know that we, both internally and externally, we mean it.
That it's real. Yeah.
And when you do that, you don't have to do that a lot of time. Now, you're going to have to keep using violence. You're going to have to keep cutting the heads off the Hydra when right? You're going to have to keep doing it. But you do it enough times over enough period of time, including 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, and the rest of, the resentfuls within and without realize, I don't want to be dark 30.
Not sternly worded letters. It's people getting shot in the face.
And this is the funny part about all this.
It's not a nice, go ahead.
Which is that you have a vindictive prick, killer, former Marine as vice president, learning and sitting there right now. Vance is the odds-on pick to be the
but there's a lot of disquiet in my community with Vance.
I understand that. I understand that.
A lot. So, and like vocally so.
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out about a lot of this stuff as well as we go forward. And I think that we're going to find out what the real state of affairs is after the midterms, regardless of the outcome, by the way.
So, completely agree. Here's what I will say, right? Again, Tommy, though, what you're saying. That State of the Union address was an open declaration. We are ready.
Yep.
Throw whatever you got. We are ready. And hey, everybody in the world, see them for who they really are. So very much, Tom, to what you're articulating and saying, and the smugness on them and everything they knew, right? They think they know what's coming and they don't. They don't know what they're up against. And that hasn't happened for a long time.
Well, it's really funny, AM, again, and we'll pop it over to the Colonel in just a second. I'm watching the reaction of Europe and London this weekend, and they don't have an answer.
Yes.
Their answer has been completely. It's not like their normal quiet where they're like, well, it doesn't really matter. We'll extend and pretend and all this other nonsense. This is. We will have a meeting on Monday. That's because Europeans don't work on weekends anymore, including their leadership. I guess because World War III broke out, but we don't clock in on the weekends.
But it didn't.
You know what I mean. You understand what I mean. What I'm saying is, Tommy, we're in this big moment, and what the only thing Ursula von der Leyen could say was, we're going to convene a meeting on Monday.
There was a great tweet right after Trump was first term, right when it's like whatever fall 2016 or January 27th. I don't even remember who said it, but it said America, the best way to sum everything up is America found its balls and the rest of the world has no idea what to do. And like that's kind of what it looks like is.
Again, back to the bar fight. I keep coming back to it, right? I've been into a lot of them. At some point, the guy stands up, knocks the bitch out. And everybody's aghast, right? Everybody that was feeding off of the chaos and the conflicts. And there's a sudden lack of oxygen as everybody's like, oh shit, somebody's actually doing the right thing.
Actually, someone's throwing hands.
Yeah. Somebody's throwing hands, and they didn't throw it randomly or chaos. No, they went right to the person who was responsible, guilty, and they didn't care she was a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I see happening with the neocons and Democrats in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
Trump has sucked all of the oxygen. I mean, they still squeal and everything, but it is just amazing to me that he comes. I mean, he's literally broken the mainstream media. It's dysfunctional. And the more he breaks it, the more obvious who's controlling them becomes. And it's the same thing with the fraud. And the taking out of all of the what I refer to as the stay-behinds in all of these major cities. and the terror cells there. It's just systematically boom, boom, boom. And they're all standing around with their mouth hanging open. Like, hell.
Now what?
If people, I have friends in all kinds of places and all kinds of things, right? And the things I'm hearing that I can't say astound me about what's actually happening behind the scenes, what's actually physically happening, like specifically who's actually getting rolled up in these ICE raids.
And I will save you the problem from having to say it because I don't know any of those people, but it is so obvious to me with the research that I have done and the tracking of these terror cells in the United States. These cities are not being picked randomly. And they are able to, and that tells you that they have done a lot of research about where these networks are.
They know exactly. So, Colonel, very much to that. People need to take a moment and step back and think, okay, Sarah Adams, CIA, everybody's running out. And if you don't give us what we want, we're going to mass casualty terrorist attacks. We just took out Iran in one salvo of airstrikes, and not even with missile barrages, not even with a shock and awe bombing. Nope, just surgically precise. Why? Because we worked with the Persian peoples and others in the region. We have all the targeting, and we just ended 40 years of we're going to war with Iran. There is no war with Iran now. Iran's decapitated. Okay, do you think that they did that without having first used ICE to go after all of the assets that would have been used here to do the terrorism first? You think they would have not done it in that order? Do you think that State of the Union address was not already that was the articulation of the State of the Union address? We're going to do this thing that needs to be done.
I don't know.
And you don't have the foot soldiers anymore here to cause this mass terrorist attacks because we used ICE over the last year to get rid of them.
I don't have the receipts, but I know Joe Kent's involved.
Well, Joe actually messaged something. Yeah, Joe messaged something this morning. Yeah. Isn't it interesting that during the time we were in the hours leading up to, the days leading up to this, Joe Kent's been out with the guys tactically down on the border, and he just tweeted that this morning.
Yeah.
No, again, think about, go back to the marriage of the war against the financialists and the war on the ground. Go back to go watch the silver market. I've been watching capital markets since the 1990s. I've been in silver and watching them destroy the market since 2001, right?
Yeah.
And I have never seen a 5-week period of price lack of discovery or lack thereof, price movement. The way we've seen it in the silver market over these last 5 weeks has been unbelievable, has been stunning. Like, it's been stunning. I was writing about this afternoon. Is what I was doing for most of the day. I'm like, go back and look at a weekly chart of silver and look at the last week of January. It was a $49 move. Yeah. Now, for 30 years, silver's been, or 50 years, 46 years, silver's been trying to break $50 as the all-time high. And then in 1 week, it was the range. Yeah. We get a 3-week downtrend. And then Scott Bessent reverses it in 2 weeks. Technical fucking reversal. This thing's going to $300 in my mind because of what I just saw.
I think it's
because the last time I watched them break the silver market was 2011, the weekend they killed Osama. We announced that we had killed Osama bin Laden, and we used that as the means by which to break the bull market in silver. And we went from 49.50 or whatever it was. And by the end of the week, we were trading at 35. And then silver took 14 years to recover from that. We recovered that in 4 fucking weeks.
Yeah. No, I think, Tom, I think silver's going somewhere at 300 or 400.
Plus, and if you don't think that plus the operation in central Mexico are not related, I'm sorry, you're a fucking idiot.
As the great Colonel Watkins says, I don't think it's unrelated.
I don't think it's unrelated, as we talked about the other day. Yeah.
Well, this gets back, and Tom, you pronounced it better than I do. I don't speak Greek, but it's Malone Labe. We are restoring to peoples, the Venezuelans, the Persians, the Mexicans, right? We are restoring to them their what's called the Nature's Bank. And the Nature's Bank or Reserve Bank, right, depending on the peoples, that's their minerals in the ground. That's their mineral wealth and the soil productivity. They call it the Afghans, everywhere I've been in the world, they call it that's Nature's Bank.
Right.
That's their real wealth. These people know it. People, they're barely literate, et cetera. They know that's their wealth. And what are we doing? We are giving back people their resources and the productivity of their resources and their land. And we're articulating to them, okay, here's how you defend it.
And Canadians, we want to do the same for you.
Well, because
we had to beat you at your own game to shame you into understanding that that's where you are.
Well, we needed to let you hurt enough through your own inaction for us to be able. But the truth of the matter is, Canadians are us. Actual Canadians. I know. Flooded in there. This is family, right? Literal family.
I agree. Right? And we have to liberate the Canadians from the people who are literally assisted suiciding the white people out of existence.
Well, it's
obscene. What's happening in Canada.
I think that the end of this civil war is we restore the Commonwealth writ large. And I even think Gibraltar is going to be back. Diego Garcia is going to be back. And I also think Rhodesia is going to be back. I personally, the way because Russia and China want the English-speaking world, this English empire, to be restored. Because now now we don't have these loose ends out there in the world, et cetera, that we all have to deal with. We don't have these destabilizing forces, right? Now, what are they going to do? They can't participate in that because that's a casus belli for nuclear war.
Right.
What they can do is they can help us from the outside. They can make sure we don't have squirters come out somewhere in the world. They can also make sure that if they have individuals in their societies and civilizations and countries that are participating in our civil war, they just tell us.
And vice versa.
You might want to look at that guy. You might want to look at that guy.
Hey,
and, by the way,
by the way, we got this fucker, whatever in Manhattan. He's fucking over.
Correct.
Xi Jinping.
Correct. And then miraculously, a guy falls off a 2-foot rock wall and dies in France. A Chinese guy. It's like, wow, how'd that happen?
I don't know.
How'd that happen?
Slipped.
Clumsy.
He wasn't part goat. He slipped. He just slipped.
So
what am I gonna do?
So you got to Tom Strong's Italian, but like so when you get to like how do you make it stick? And then this is more just of personal curiosity. Like what is it? And that's kind of what I said earlier with you and Steve about sometimes it's sometimes you're more comfortable with like a familiar hell than an unfamiliar heaven, right? And I said it about the podcast. Right. The scariest part of this podcast is when it starts to work out. I accept everything else. Like I accept getting knocked on the door by the FBI. I'm like, that's par for the course. When it works and there's like money in my bank, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like it's scary.
Yeah.
What does it look like when they've made it stick? I mean, is it just the most base level? Is it just a living wage and less outright war?
Well, okay, so that's a great question, and your mind's going to the right place. We know it sticks when money is real.
All right.
When productivity is priced properly.
Yep.
And we are able to afford all the things that we need to do, the things that we need to do at those prices.
Yeah.
Okay. So
a couple of things on that one. So 2 things. Well, actually, just one real big thing, which is that we're going to see we're going to see. It's been a long fucking day. We're going to see a prioritization by people of quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go back to civilization. We'll go back to civilization.
We're going to go back to building beautiful things that last, as opposed to disposable things that we replace because they're just a net present value calculation.
Yeah.
We have to get away from that mindset. And
consumer economy goes away. Consumer economy goes away, and we go back to passing things down in family.
Absolutely. We go back to building houses that will outlive us, and we pass them to our children. And we put them in land trusts that they can't fucking take from us. Because we put 50 caliber friggin' machine gun nests on top of the cupola on top of the house.
Yeah. It's the quote, right? It's a society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they won't sit under.
That's right.
That's the marker.
That's right.
How do the, very much Tom, what you say, and Tom, very much we articulating, Colonel, sorry, we keep talking over you and
that's fine.
Right, keep, interrupting you. The way in which the social, Tom, back to the conversation, you and I have been bouncing back and forth privately, et cetera, is the way, I very much care about the social contract between the true elites, the true upper class, and the people, right? And historically, the ways in when these types of imbalances have occurred, and this has been the work of my life for 26 years now, the way in which social obligation contract is restored is we restore the commons, the wealthy elite restore the commons. So a lot of this stolen wealth has bought a lot of land and a lot of resources that need to belong back to the people. We need to de-enclose, right? That's the specific term. And we need to give back the commons, the ability for people to grow their own food and their own, raise their own, no matter, right? Okay, we need to do that. We need to get rid of welfare states and restore the commons. That's one thing, okay? One piece. The other piece is that for those people that are not at the base level, society, civilization, cognitive capacities, emotional regulation, et cetera, we teach people how to play the game that the upper class people, we teach people how trusts work. We teach people all the ways in which to create and build assets and protect assets. We teach people for stock companies. We teach people the security stuff. We don't just give them, and I hear some things about accounts, et cetera, but it's not enough to give people the accounts because their kids are going to blow it. If that family, what you have to do is you have to teach the common man. And this is what Alfred the Great did in England and his son and his grandson 1,200 years ago. You have to teach the common man the way in which the king lives. And you have to make it possible for the common man to live some part of that themselves from their own labor and their own efforts.
Agreed.
And you have to protect it legally. You have to protect it physically. And you have to do everything you can to create a society and a civilization that protects the commons. And wealth is the most important commons of all, the shared wealth, right? The pool of wealth that we all work with.
Yeah. Yep. The pool of what Austrians would call the pool of real savings.
Colonel.
Yeah, real savings.
Colonel, we'll let you, if you want, wrap it up. Your patience.
Well, I find it interesting that just in my experience that I've obviously through education in the business realm, to me, the most successful model of companies that fit what Ian was just talking about are the ones that have shared ownership of them, where everybody in the company does better when the company does better. And it's one of the rarest business models in America. There are some out there, but that type of business model, to Ian's point about educating people, even in the trades, they have companies that are owned by everybody. And the more productive and effective they are, the better their check is. And to me, that obviously has been a model that's been shunned in the United States because that was not ever the purpose of our capitalist economy here. It was really always about the theft of the wealth of the lower rungs of the people and the accumulation of that stolen wealth by the oligarchs. And I could not agree more about the education piece of this. Our entire education system has been destroyed, and they have literally no skills when they graduate. There is a preponderance in some states that can't even read. My daughter is a teacher. This is something that's very personal to me. I think it's critical that aspect of it, and that we throw away many of the models that we have had in the past and put the emphasis on what EM said as far as the ability for people to understand the entire system so that they can be more effective in the system.
Yeah, not to be cogs, but to be owners.
Yeah.
Correct.
And this is what it means to be, and this is uniquely English. Unlike any other civilization in the history of the world, this is uniquely English. The right, this individual sovereignty, the right to private property. You can't be sovereign if you don't own private property. Self first, self productivity. You're right, and then the balance of power, so that we can maintain that. This is uniquely English, and we have to go back to this.
I agree.
Right. And our elites, they lose nothing for teaching people how to do for stock companies. They do nothing by teaching, lose nothing by teaching people how to do trust structures. They lose nothing by restoring the commons. In fact, they gained everything because now they're not paying 85% of the taxes.
That's right.
Well, it's also just a more robust thing. It's if you are the elite, by definition, if the thing is right, you are the elite of a larger.
Well, but they definitely don't like competition.
No.
And there's a lot of commons out there that are very, very smart, and they've rigged the system so that they cannot ever got on their own unless they're controlled.
They have a gatekeeper system. They have a gatekeeper system that makes sure that talent is identified and never gets access.
That's right.
It can't be totally controlled.
That's right. Correct. No, so it starts with removing the entire justification for almost every tax that we pay.
Correct.
I mean, from property tax, which is an unrealized capital gains tax, to all of it. It doesn't matter.
It's a rent.
An abomination. Yeah,
it's a rent.
It's even worse. Yeah, it's even worse than. But it's unrealized capital gains tax. You paid the house off, and now you're paying, but you're still paying that. Yeah, it's rent.
Yeah, but again, it's rent. It's rent too. But who's your owner now? It's not the mortgage holder. Now it's the government.
No. Yeah.
So you're still paying rents.
And it's not even then. It's the government. And guess who the government sold your
correct exactly
to the bondholders.
Yeah.
So
absolutely the case. So restoration of the commons in this case are twofold. One, you have to provide the lower classes with the ability to provide for their own food.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Provide. We've got little common gardens, but they're too small, etc. We've got to undo the enclosure of the commons, because that's where this whole financialist system took off in the 1600s in the United Kingdom, in what would become the United Kingdom. Okay, that's the first piece. The second piece is, how do you do that? And then how do you do the broader, here's the wealth for all the people. You do have to do a Norway-like sovereign wealth fund for the assets of the United States. And you have to teach other countries like the Persians, the Iranians, like the Venezuelans, like others, here's how you replicate this American system.
Yep. Well, as our mutual friend Rich likes to talk about all the time, Crypto Rich likes to talk about all the time, what's happening in Burkina Faso and other places in the south of Africa.
Yeah.
It's like this is the beginning, and we have to restore that for Mexico. We have to restore that for especially in the places, especially everywhere, especially here.
Yeah.
We're starting the process in Florida, and that should replicate itself. Now, of course, we have political shitbags, Bushians, and the rest of them in Florida trying desperately to stop that from happening. But it's where we have to. That's got to be our North Star at this point, and we have to stay on target and keep demanding that. Everything else will take care of itself.
Absolutely, Tom. To your point, though, right? Just, we're not going to be done with this in our lifetime.
No. Oh no.
So to your point, you can go ahead and stay Eeyore under your little cloud to the end of your life. You're going to be okay there, because the cloud's going to last. This is going to take the rest of our lives, and the rest of our lives for every generation alive today, by the way. And we still got to get through the Civil War part sometime in the middle part of the next decade for that to even be possible.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
But this is a 4 generations of work. 4 saeculums. All that kind of stuff.
But even that, it's the whole if it's worth fighting for, then you're not worried about it. In the same way, it's like the podcast. So like how many years ahead, and it's like, but I enjoy the work. So it's like, I know it's going to take years, but at the same time, I'm like, I enjoy every month of it. I enjoy every week of it. Like it is going to go forever. But it's not this thing where I'm like, how much longer do I go? Like, no, so it's the thing. And you're not going to look at it as like, well, how many more generations? It's going to be very simply like, you don't have to look at it like that. You're going to look at it like, well, I like my family and I like the town I'm in, and it's a beautiful town, and it's just society worth, planting trees whose shade I know I won't sit under. That's fine. It's going to take forever, but you won't mind because it's a life worth living.
What's that cathedral that's about to be finished?
Oh yeah,
finally after 144.
144.
Yeah, Familia something.
Yeah,
Basilica de Familia.
Yeah,
right.
that.
It's that. I'm never going to see it finished. I mean, we will now, but 144 years ago, even 40 years ago.
Oh yeah, you can see the pauses in construction during World War I, World War II. You're like, fuck.
And we're literally fighting demons who are importing people to destroy every friggin' church that's ever been built.
That's the other thing. It's like it's
disgusting.
It's easy to hate.
It's disgusting.
It's not a hard enemy to be like, how do we rile up the energy? It's like they're demons from hell. They're fucking
the bigger question is, as I said earlier, is how do we organize the energy against them that's already here? Now it's a matter of organization of the energy because no one's willing to fight for them.
Yeah,
no one's willing to fight for their claims to property and everything else. So now we have to and that's our responsibility. And as far as I'm concerned, it's like it's the greatest job in the world.
You have to give people ownership.
That's
the only way that people will fight. And you can't give them the hope of ownership if they no. You have to give people ownership. You give people ownership, and then and the other piece, I'm just say it straight up, we're going to have to give them the legal protections and coverage for the shit that's going to have to happen. You have to give them that.
We have to make Joe Kent president.
Because we're going to have to do some really unpleasant things because we've been forced to that position.
The moral justification of it is that they're all murderers and thieves. So,
well, I don't even care if they're that because they are here without our permission.
Yeah, fuck off. I don't need
exactly.
I don't need any other excuse. I don't need any other justification because then I got tens of millions of people here. Don't fucking believe here because they're not murderers and thieves. No. We didn't want you here. You were not invited. You were brought here against our will.
I said this earlier with Ben about why should we turn away these people? And it's like, you don't need to give them an explanation. You don't. I said this, put a mask on with a backpack, hop the fence at the White House lawn and tell me how quickly the Secret Service is going to tell you over a megaphone why they're stopping you. And it's not just going to be a 50 cal round through your fucking brainstem. Like, hey, why are you no, hey, fuck off. Hey, fuck off. How about that? Fuck off.
How about I live on go away?
Yeah. How about it? It's America.
I live on. That's the name. I'm being facetious, but I live. My driveway is Goa Way.
Yeah.
Right. Gun Owners of America Way. That's where I live. Fuck off.
That's amazing.
Okay. Those found here after dark will be found here in the morning. This is not very particularly difficult.
As long as we can, and lastly, as long as I can find a reason to somehow blame the lack of my podcast growth on this 400-year-old civil war, I'm okay with that.
It's actually straight up. That actually is straight up true.
I really need a scapegoat.
What does this 400 artificial system? What is it based off of? Artificiality. It's all artificial. And what does artificiality fear the worst? Reality.
Right.
The truth.
Whatever. I don't need any receipts. You just tell me why it's not my fault.
That's it.
And energetically speaking, folks, just remember that lies are expensive and the truth sells itself.
Very true. Which is why the Earth is flat. That's how I live.
That's right. No, absolutely. The Earth is flat and there's a hole in the middle, and we're all in the back.
That's how I lose everyone that we just got. Let's wrap it up, Colonel. Thank you for showing up on short notice for us three retards to talk over you. You're extremely patient and.
We toxic males. Yes.
We toxic men.
I love it. I feel like I'm back in the military.
Yeah.
Now that there is high praise because I haven't been the farthest thing from a military man in my entire life. So
I was talking about the masculine.
Oh, okay. I'll live with that. Okay.
I know it's ego flattery, and I'll take it. I don't care. I don't care. I know the steak is fake. I don't give a shit. Give it to me. We'll wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much. Please go to the description. Please go follow all their Twitter, Substack, YouTube, Colonel's Rumbles in there, all that good shit. Blah 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 blah. Thank you all so much for your time, guys. Thank you for watching. Cheers. Take care. Hey guys, thanks for watching. 3 quick organizations that I try to help through the podcast. I don't take any money from, and I wouldn't if they offered. First and foremost is ARC, the Association for the Recovery of Children. That's led by Basil Baz. It's been around since 1993. They physically liberate sex trafficked children They get about 10 to 12 kids a year. I've got a fundraiser thrown for them before. You can go to the link in the description. You can donate, I think, as little as $1. It's tax deductible. They are truly doing the Lord's work. This isn't an awareness campaign. This isn't wristbands. They physically go in, kick down doors, and liberate children who are raped daily. They're doing the Lord's work. If you can go help them, you can go give $1. You can also take their training programs and do your best to help spot human trafficking in the world around you. It really is, if there's anything that this podcast accomplishes on this earth, I think it should be to help them. The second group is Invest, like a vest, a bulletproof vest, led by Mike Letts. 25% of police precincts in the United States cannot afford to give their, and this is true, cannot afford to give their officers cars, weapons, nor vests. They cannot do that. And you can donate as little as $1. They have donated over, I believe, 70,000 bulletproof vests in 30 years. Actually, Invest and ARC were both founded in 1983. Fun fact. And Invest is also doing something that is dovetailing actually with ARC. I put them in touch. BAR, Broken Arrow Ranch, which is to make sure that the kids who are rescued don't fall right back into the traffic system. So ARC, you can go in there and you can help them, and Invest, you can also go in there and help them. And lastly is the Church of the Barbarian Spirit. That's my buddy Clay Martin, Special Forces. It is a group to where Special Forces veterans are helping other Special Forces veterans in unconventional ways, be it fasting, be it psychedelics, be it just face-to-face talking, to reduce suicide rates. And as you guys know, suicide is very near and dear to me. So those are three groups that I really think are actively trying to make the world a better place instead of just talking about it. If you guys could just go check them out, go share their links, go do whatever you can. If you can donate, go donate. If not, that's cool too. But, long after I'm dead, and long after you guys are gone, I want the lasting impact of this podcast to be something that's genuinely helped the world. So if you guys can go check those out, that would be insanely appreciated. Thank you so much.